we look at the issues objectively. Is there any other request to speak before I...
Not on this item.
close the item? Okay, then I'll refer to the board for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask County Council to address the last comment about property line versus residence?
Yes, thank you. As I started out with our presentation on the application of the ordinance, even though the distance runs from the property line, in order for this ordinance to be applicable, you have to have picketing activity that proceeds directly in front of or around a particular residence. A general march through Gilman Springs Road would not be necessarily a picketing activity that's targeting a particular residence.
Thank you. Any other questions of County Council? Well, my colleagues, we've been through this hearing quite a few times. I think we've massaged this ordinance that was a prototype of an ordinance that was used in San Diego County. I'll tell you honestly what was the instigation of me bringing this to the board. It was that during the issue of Proposition 8, that there was Mormon bishops that were being protested in their homes that led to some potential violence. We know that there are many issues that we get emotionally charged about, and I felt that there needed to be some safety and tranquility for people that live in residences that was highlighted by the issues that were happening at the Golden Era production. So this has been something that I've been considering bringing to the board for a long time. I think as we are in these economic times that we are going to see other very hotly contested issues both at the local, the state, and the federal level. This is an ordinance that is much more liberal than is in any other municipality in the area, including the County of San Diego, Los Angeles, San Bernardino. And I showed or exemplified what 30 feet is. It's not very far. If you want to have an effective protest against a targeted residence, you can effectively get your voice and your concerns known. It does allow for the safe ingress and egress of those being protested against. And I think that this is going to prevent somebody from getting hurt in our county, which was the motivation from the very beginning. It's all in the best interest of public safety. It's balancing the public safety needs of our residents and ensuring that we have the constitutional rights of expression and protest. You know, we don't always like to just bring things forward that are, you know, slam dunk 5-0 votes. We bring things forward that need to be addressed. This one's a very difficult ordinance to address. But in the best interest of public safety, I'm going to support it. And I urge my colleagues to do the same. Supervisor Buster.
Yeah, I had assumed that at some point during these somewhat protracted discussions on all the changes in the ordinance that we would hear from somebody who was a homeowner or apartment dweller who was disturbed by protest, either woken up when they were trying to sleep, day or night. We had day sleepers that complained to me about the sheriff's shooting range out there in Mead Valley now. So people are very aware now, as they haven't been before, by train whistles, DHL sounds, and all the rest around my district about noise. And so I assume that we get somebody down here to write me a note or show up here to testify and say, yes, I was disturbed by protesters, either by their noise, or I was impeded either getting in or out of my house or my driveway. And yes, I called the sheriff or the police, if they live in the city, and that didn't help. Or, or I felt physically frightened in some way. I would assume somebody would showed up, but no one did. In fact, there was no one from the Church of Scientology who actually lived in those dwelling units who came down here and said the protesters really interfered with my daily life, my tranquility, what I expect as a church member and someone having to live out there. No one showed up. So, if there's a reason for this ordinance, I haven't seen it yet. Now, if there are cases where you see something going on in other counties, you say to yourself, boy, we better get in and prevent that from happening here, because once it's happened, the horse is out of the barn, or something could happen, and it'd be so traumatic that we really need to get in with an emergency ordinance and take care of it. Let me give you an example of that. Maybe it's not quite apropos, but we have a problem here with these invasive mussels and quagga and zebra mussels that are getting in the water system in the Colorado River. And boy, once they get in there, or you know, in my industry, citrus, we have another insect that's coming up that could wipe out the whole citrus industry. So we better get out ahead of the ball and put proactive measures in here in Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake, and the boaters and so on and so forth to prevent these things from ever getting introduced. Because you just one, or I don't know if they're asexual, or two, and away you go. And you spend millions and millions, if not billions of dollars after that. Well, that's the same thing with this kind of ordinance. If there's some reason to circumscribe constitutional rights that are in the Basic Bill of Rights or in the Constitution, there ought to be a very, very high showing that either this is inevitable, it's going to happen here, it's going to happen quick, or if it does happen, even in one instance, that the consequences of it are so damaging, and that we do not, our other ordinances are clear showing that they're not going to deal with the issue, that there's justification for the ordinance we draw up. So I don't see this ordinance passing those sorts of tests, and I don't know where does 30 feet come from? You know, 30 feet's not enough to mitigate noise of chanting protesters, or it's difficult for people to measure off 30 feet. Where do you measure it from? Where's the property line? Difficult for the sheriff's enforcement people, the lawyers, and all the rest to make a judgment about when people are going in and out of this 30 feet. Ordinance should be clear. There should be a need for them. There should be people who have been adversely affected and showing that the present ordinances are not sufficient to take care of the issue. So we have none of that in this case. So I would have voted for this if there was a clear showing, those kinds of showing, and if we'd had testimony from people who had gone through, you can imagine. You could be a gauntlet if they're protesting or groups protesting for days and weeks on end in front of your house and interfering with you and scaring your kids and all the rest. That hasn't happened, and we have no such testimony here for this ordinance. So absent those things, I cannot support this ordinance.
Thank you, Supervisor Buster. Any other requests to speak?